Admiral Chase, the whole thing of what happened, first is the United States government, Department of Defense, do we pay ransoms?
No, sir, we do not.
Do we counterattack?
That would be a whole of government approach based on a preponderance of other factors and national policy.
The reason I'm saying that, knowing that we do not pay ransoms, but the private sector, there's no rule or law against the private sector paying them, as we just saw Colonial pay.
A true statement, and I believe one of the other challenges I've seen in popular reporting, depending on who you look at, somewhere between a 15 and 22% rate, even if you pay the ransom, that you'll actually get your decrypted data back.
When I think
that's what I'm reading in the open press.
Sure. Well, I'm just saying it sets up, this illegal criminal activity that will continue to grow, and knowing that the American public or the American businesses will pay, or thinking they will, if Colonial sets a standard. It's probably the highest profile I've heard of paying that type of a ransom. What, 4.9 million in crypto? I believe that was the amount.
I believe that's what I heard was asked.
Yeah, that's what we heard.
I don't have any knowledge of what was paid.
The thing I'm trying to say is this: we have so many different cyber agencies in different, cyber departments in different agencies. But there's only one, I think, that would have the ability to hit back and hit it pretty good, would be you all.
Senator, I think one of the challenges at cybersecurity level, you're left with two things: espionage and sabotage. So depending on how those are, one's a crime, and the other would be if done by foreign actors. And this is one of the challenges of attribution, even from some of the latest ones, is with the commoditization of malware, it may have been developed, by one entity, but used by another and employed by, a far less sophisticated actor in the case of an unprotected customer. So I think
we were able to detect where it came from and who did it. Didn't something that took that long for them to identify?
We know that the malware was written in some Russian code or to not attack certain Russian actors, but I have not seen any attribution of who actually did the act.
I'm just saying that there has to be something that we as a country and our government is going to use to deter this from happening again or continue to happen.
Absolutely, Senator. I think that the most recent one with the dark side shows that this is effectively organized crime, and the international community has to come to terms with how we're going to deal with this, not just the United States, but this is a worldwide problem.
Is there discussions going on?
I believe that there's certainly a recognition that this is a problem. I tend to spend more of my time on the cybersecurity side than the policy side.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Salazar, I want to come back to you for just a minute. In your opening statement, you indicated that the CMMC rules were being vetted at this time, and that it would probably be at, I think you said, about 10 months yet, or close to a year from the beginning until the end. Would you expect that the finals on the CMMC rules would be in place by the end of this year?
As I mentioned, it typically takes about a year to adjudicate comments for this kind of a DFARS rule. 850 comments is what we consider a very high volume of comments. And on top of that, we have the recommendations from our internal policy review. So about half of the comments that we received to the DFARS rule were not about the rule itself, but about the program. And so that's why, as part of our look, we are trying to assess how we bring clarity to the requirements that we're asking, looking at the barriers to small businesses, and then making sure that we have trust in this assessment ecosystem.
Thank you. During that time period until CMMC is implemented, we're going to find, we're still going to have those openings, and, the risk that CMMC is trying to address is still there. So I'm going to come back over now to Admiral Chase. And I think where the chairman is going with regard to his line on this in terms of how do we coordinate to be able to protect not just the DOD, but all of the different entities that the American public rely on from cyber attack is so critical. And I think it would surprise a lot of the folks out there to realize that the Department of Defense really doesn't have a role to play today in defending against cyber attacks coming in from overseas, at least directly, and that they have to be invited in by Homeland Security in order to respond. It seems to me that part of the responsibility that we have here is to be able to coordinate between the different, as we call them, silos or offices. A lot of that's got to start in the White House and within the top ends of the executive branch of government. We wanted, and I think the cyber solariums last time around laid out clearly the need for a principal cyber advisor. And when we laid out the principal cyber advisor to the president, we also, and that would be the national cyber director, we modeled that in many ways along the same lines as we wanted to have a principal cyber advisor for the Secretary of Defense and for each of the separate branches within the Department of Defense. And I think that's still critical that we have someone there to provide advice, to look at integrating those cybersecurity needs and a sense of how critical cybersecurity is in all of the things that we do within DoD. And I sense that there is almost a blowback to that in terms of we're not seeing the principal cyber advisors being identified, and we're not seeing the national cyber advisor necessarily being sent in for approval by the United States Senate. So my question, Admiral Chase, and I'm just going to offer this, what does that do in your role here? And as you hear us asking the questions of you today, do you find it a challenge in terms of just your role to try to respond to the demands that are out there with regard to protecting DoD from the attacks that are ongoing? As you indicated to Senator Blumenthal, the attacks are ongoing, and they're always there, and there are people that are incurring right now. Is it simply a matter that we haven't lit a fire yet, or is it a matter of we don't have the technical expertise, or is it simply a matter that the bad guys the numbers are so large in numbers that we're going to have a tough time getting ahead of this whole program? What is it that seems to slow down our ability to respond quickly with regard to the cyber attacks that are going on?
For the department, I mean, I think we spend a fair bit of our time making sure that we don't have stovepipes, and that's, to your point, exactly what I believe Congress stood up the principal cyber advisor to do. And I think we, on a day-in, day-out basis, we run up to 10 or 11 cross-functional teams, kind of by subject matter, covering broadly 4 areas: 1, the DoDN; 2, the DIB; 3, mission assurance and weapons systems critical infrastructure that are not traditionally cyber things, but were created before those thoughts were prevalent, and yet we still have some of the older weapon systems. So how do we deal with those? And this is where the strategic cybersecurity program, mission assurance pieces come in. And then we have workforce to work across all of those as well. So we spend a lot of time in those cross-functional areas with others as the lead and just making sure, doing introductions, hey, do we have this particular aspect covered down? So I find that our organization is most successful by asking questions rather than by trying to be forceful at certain pieces, because seldom are we the lead except for in areas like DIB coordination. But again, that's making sure left and right hand know who's coordinating which part. So I think you're absolutely correct about breaking down barriers, minimizing the barrier to entry as a principle. I think we all want for improving cybersecurity, whether or not we're talking about the DIB, the DoDN, or areas of weapon systems and critical infrastructure.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's one of the things here that as we challenge these leaders within cybersecurity, it's really the public policy part of this that we have yet to fix, in my opinion. And that is that we have folks from outside of the United States who are clearly interested in reading our intellectual properties at all levels. And yet we have the multiple silos within the department or within the whole of government that because of our public policy, we don't want to inflict the DoD onto the public here, and we don't want the DoD directly involved in the day-to-day lives or within the defense industrial base or any of the other industries in the country. And yet I think the public has this expectation that we have a capability to defend them. And yet, because of our own public policy, even if we know about it, Homeland Security can't reach out and stop the guy who's throwing the systems in or the weapons in. And the Department of Defense, who really have a lot of great capabilities, really can't go out and get them until they find out about the attacks themselves. And so we find ourselves at a point in which we have to coordinate it, and we're not doing a good job of that yet.
Senator, and this is for discussion for you all and for us too, but the Department of Defense is going to intervene to prevent something from happening once they identify it. I'm just looking at the Colonial. I've been concerned about this because I know of our infrastructure so much. We know what Mother Nature did to Texas and how that shut down, and the lives were at danger and everything that happened. Okay, we know what the Colonial Pipeline, what it did to the economic, I mean, all up and down the East Coast just about, especially in the South. It just destroyed it for that period of time, about a week. So that is an attack to me as far as in our country.
Yes, sir. It's very, the threat is very real. It's not just cybersecurity, it's to the reality of the DIBS business. And the private sector writ large is under the same attack. We think the fastest way we can bring that to bear and not be completely reactive is to share the threat information that we have at the cybersecurity level, the tactics, techniques, and procedures. Hey, after we saw A, B, the next thing that's going to happen is C, and we can.
Well,
be
we've had
specific.
solar winds, we've had so many different things happening back and forth, and we're just still trying to. But do you know of any? Did we have any knowledge at all of this Colonial Pipeline that you know of? Did we see anything?
We do not. I believe even the history of that particular actor only goes back about a year. If you look in public internet, will tell you that it springs up. And this is what I spoke to earlier about the commoditization of malware and actors. It's been made relatively straightforward and easy for criminals to do so. Unique about this one is they seem to have had a network of subordinate actors to do some of the work after packaging up the malware. So I think that's a sad statement on the sign of our times, but it's also the reality that every member of the private sector is under as well.
But with regard to that particular one, if my knowledge is correct, and I'll ask the Admiral if he would confirm it for us. Number one, there's no rule that says that the private company needs to notify either Homeland Security or the FBI or the Department of Justice. And then second of all, even if they did notify the FBI, the Department of Justice, and so forth, there is no established ongoing process in which to gather that information and then deliver it to the Department of Defense to respond to those threats coming in from overseas, unless they specifically request. And to the best of my knowledge, number one, we're not aware that Homeland Security was even advised of what occurred. And second of all, to the best of our knowledge, and I'll ask you to confirm this part, I don't think the Department of Defense was ever asked to intervene or to assist in this particular case. Were you?
I'm not aware of it, and if we are, I'll take that one for the record and come back and tell you.
Thank you.
If you could, any information you can. The other thing, with crypto coming in the way it's coming on all over the world, it makes it much more difficult for us to follow as we could with currency. And that's been the problem we've had. Have you all been looking at the crypto and how we might be able to have better tabs on that or be able to have identity and follow that?
You're talking about cryptocurrency as
Yeah.
a means of payment. That's not something my office has particularly studied. We've been on the other side of cryptography, protecting our weapon systems and critical infrastructure.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to have to use all the expertise we have, I think, to defend our country. Mr. Salazar, do you have anything you want to add to the conversation that we're talking? It's kind of a random here.
Only that across the DIB, I'd encourage any CEO, any owner, any board of directors to begin to think right now about how to prioritize cybersecurity. There are a number of low-cost tools that can help these businesses create the layers of protection that they need. But as they're not waiting until DoD requirements, of course,
Admiral, anything else?
No, Senator, thank you.
Senator Rounds? Well, if not, let me thank you both for coming. It was very enlightening, and we appreciate very much your service to our country. I really do appreciate that very much. I know that Senator Rounds feels very strongly about that, too. So with that,